Welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, and we are back again at the Craft Beer Cellar on Main Street in Plymouth. If you are looking for craft beers, boutique wines, even some stuff for charcuterie trays, sure.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. Yeah, there's such. I can never say that right. This is a place to be. Stop in, say hi to Tatum, pick up some stuff. And I was just talking to today's guest. We've been kind of going back and forth for quite a while.
Decades.
Yeah, it seems like it. And so he's going to put my voice to shame. Kevin Lowney, professional voiceover, voice actor, professional voice?
A professional voice, yeah. Kevin Lowney.
Oh, Lowney. I'm sorry. If you haven't listened to any of the episodes, I script everyone's name. Like, every single and I'm like, I have this one. But no, I don't.
I caught one of the ones with
Lowney.
you had the horror people in Plymouth.
Oh, yeah, that one's great.
Because 2 for 3, I think.
2 for 3 is pretty good for me. And I was so convinced. I'm like, Matt. He's like, Mike. I'm like, damn it.
But no, yeah, Lowney's one of those ones that everyone no one gets right. It's not a complicated name, but people do Lowry.
Yeah,
they're spelling it, they add an E, subtract an E, or I get Towny, Downey all the time.
Yeah. You tend to look at it and guess, not really read it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just kind of glaze over and spits it out.
But
Lowry's not bad.
For our listeners, this isn't an act. I'm just terrible with names. I'm really bad. So, Kevin.
Yeah.
I got that right.
All right.
So, I feel like most people know what voice acting is, but that could just be me and my circle of friends. So, for our listeners who don't know, what is the whole voiceover, voice acting thing in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, well, there are different levels, different styles, different types, different things you can do. Probably, everyone's familiar with radio announcing, everyone's familiar with podcasts.
Yep.
But then to get to the specific acting part, you add acting. So there are different things you can do. You might hear them on video games, cartoons, commercials, radio commercials, things like that, television commercials.
Yeah.
Because the announcers aren't always just very straightforward and stuck up.
Sure,
They're something fun and goofy.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are announcers, but they can't really get that little zhuzh in there. You don't really feel like you want to have a beer with them or something.
Right, and sometimes I feel like more and more you hear those kind of, especially on radio, where like the announcer is an actual kind of character, and they're kind of like,
it's more of that natural vibe. It's more someone talking to you who just happens to sound good,
right?
As opposed to someone talking at you with some booming voice.
Or if they are, it's kind of like that's part of the joke.
Yeah, there's a wink to it. Yeah, exactly.
So how on earth does someone get into that? I mean, were you going for radio and ended up here, or like how does?
Well, I'm doing radio.
Okay,
I'm actually at a radio station in Marshfield right now.
WATD,
as I whack the microphone because I'm a professional, and I don't think anyone heard it, so I should have just kept going. Anyway, and then I've an acting and theater background. Since high school on and off. Mostly community theater stuff. Some paid for stuff here and there, and doing things with friends and little short movies and animation pieces and whatnot. So the two have just kind of come together for me. Yeah,
and that kind of movie shorts and online animation thing seems to be like a huge boom now because it's just making it easier and easier for everyone to do. Everything's so much more accessible, and
it's good and it's bad because it's wonderful because it's accessible. So people who've always wondered can get a feel for it. The downside...
There's a lot of crap.
There's a lot of crap. Exactly.
Like a lot.
And even not everything that's not perfect is crap. Like some things people are trying out. You can tell, they really had this good idea. They did that thing well.
Yeah.
Overall, you're not going to sell it to Cartoon Network or something.
Sure.
But they're getting there. You're dealing with everyone else's trials and errors when you're trying to put out your opus.
And that's the thing is, like, even the stuff that may not be the best, it's Dilbert. Like, Dilbert's not drawn well. Mm-hmm. But it was hugely successful.
Very true. Yeah.
So you can have something that may not be the best animation, but if it's written well and it's funny, and or the other way around, I feel like there's some things that get a little more credit because they look pretty, but maybe aren't necessarily the best written. Or Pacific Rim jumps to mind, and I love that movie, but the plot's terrible, the acting's not
yeah.
good, but it's giant robots fighting monsters. Like, what more do you need?
Exactly. But part of what makes that movie actually pretty good is that they know.
Oh yeah,
that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're
were
not
like,
this
whatever.
is King Lear, but with robots. No, they're just like, it's giant robots.
Yeah, every second the robot's not on screen, we're losing people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you said you had a theater background, and then you got into radio. Did you always have that voice? Because I know people who, I think a good friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, I'm like, God, that guy should do voiceover. Because they have that.
They do the thing.
Yeah, they just talk like that all the time, and you're like, oh, God, I'm so jealous.
Exactly. No, yeah, I've gotten that a lot. I kind of everyone in my family says I just kind of willed this voice because no one else talks like this.
Yeah.
In the family. So who knows? Maybe. But yeah. So just you hear a lot of people go, "Oh, you should do radio. You should do whatever." And finally, I was 22.
Yeah.
Got myself fired from a job.
Nice.
Yeah. That's what the 20s are for. And then sitting on the couch in my underwear watching the news. You got to do that for a week or two.
Right. Yeah.
It's a job. It's part of the thing.
Because you're like, oh, I'm going to get some unemployment or the last paycheck or whatever.
Exactly. Got some time. Collect your thoughts. Yeah. And it's kind of like a breakup. You got to clear your head. Otherwise, it's just going to bring bad stuff into the next thing.
Convince yourself that you didn't want to work there.
I was too good for that job anyway. So, and I was, but and then I saw a commercial on TV for a college that offered a radio degree, an associate's degree in radio.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to go to one of those places that did like a certificate. Because I can give myself a certificate.
Sure,
I can give you guys certificates, no problems. They're everywhere. But at least I figured if I went for the radio thing and it didn't work, I'd at least still have an associate's degree.
Right.
And kind of move on with my life. And it was a 2-year course. Busted my butt while I was in there, working on the side, doing stuff at the campus radio station and all that. And they had a nice job placement kind of program. Found an opportunity right down the street at the Plymouth radio station here.
Oh, sure. 90...
Easy 99.1.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
And they had an opening for the weekend overnight position.
Okay.
And there just aren't that many of those in radio anymore. Yeah. That's kind of the traditional place to start people out.
Overnights?
Overnights, yeah. Because they're tucked away.
There's not too many people listening.
Exactly. 90% of your audience is asleep with the radio on.
Yeah.
But you can develop what you want to do, how you want to do it. You get to know the format. You get to know everything about the radio station and maybe develop a character and maybe, not like, a weird, crazy character, but, just how you want to represent yourself on that radio station at that time.
Yeah, because even when you are a lowly podcaster, you, like I said, it's not necessarily a character, but,
There's some
I just came from work, and so it's like, you're like, hey guys, what's going on? And you're like, then I have to bury the needle on fish and be like, welcome back, Inebri-art. Did I do it again? Did I do it again? I tried to do it again.
Get it?
Andy, at times I hate you so much.
Yeah.
so much.
Wait, I'm going to do the opposite. Andy, say something.
You want me to say something? Oh, is that like really... This is great.
This is wonderful audio. It's one whole podcast.
And this will also screw up his editing. But you do have to kind of always have that. Someone said to me one time, they're like, "Oh, you're using your radio announcer voice." I'm like, "I definitely don't have one." They're like, "No, you kind of do. You kind of do."
It turns on sometimes. Yeah.
So you started overnights. Just playing music, or
pretty much. I mean, just straightforward DJ kind of stuff. You have like 4-ish breaks an hour. You backsell the songs you just played. Yeah. You talk up what's going to be coming up. Talk about an artist. Do the weather. Whatever else they ask you to do during that time. And it was pretty straightforward stuff. No heavy lifting, but I got used to the idea. Like the very first time I sat in the chair, it was like a 2-weekend thing. So one weekend I shadowed the guy who was currently doing it and was about to leave. And the next weekend, he watched me for either the first shift or the first couple hours or whatever it was. And I just sat down in the chair. And what you do, good notes for everyone at home, you write out a roadmap. So you don't give yourself, you probably know this, I don't know, you give yourself you don't give yourself a script. Because you don't want a roadmap. Okay, so here we go.
I traditionally do zero research.
So, so give yourself a roadmap to basically, little talking points, little notes. So you want to start talking about this, that might transition into this, and then it goes into the other thing. Otherwise, you're reading a script, and you can sound very stilted because you're trying to get every word.
Right.
And you don't want that. And that's what you avoid artistically, yes.
Yes, very much. I try to keep it conversational.
And I had my roadmap in front of me, and I knew, okay, I was going to backsell that artist. I was going to do my little thing, and then go into weather, and then that would be my first break ever. I'll be making history, at least for myself, and this is it. I sit down in the chair. The song finishes. I push the button. I turn on the microphone. I look at my paper. I see nothing. It's just white. I can't process.
Yeah.
Oh, my. I'm on a 50,000-watt radio station. I've been waiting since I was a kid to do this. Here I am, and nothing. So I kind of force the artist that just played that comes out of my mouth, and then I sit there for 2 seconds, and I go right into the weather. And that's where training comes in.
Yeah.
Because even if you screw up, you have your out.
Yeah.
You can go to the weather, and that's it. But where do we start with that? Oh, my goodness. So it's there are just dumb little things that you do to get through the day. No matter what you're doing.
And did you have to kind of like work on the, speed in which you talk? Because I feel like a lot of times in the early on, like I felt like I was kind of rushing myself, not kind of like, because like a lot of times I'll kind of pause and stop and think, and I'm like, well, that's normal, that's human. Like I don't want to rush through everything. So
there are a lot of factors to that.
Yeah.
Because yes, if you're just rushing, people are going to get sick of you, especially if you're talking for half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. If you're just constantly doing this the whole time, people are going to get really sick of it because all you're doing is rambling the whole time, and no one's going to get to jump in or anything like that. If you're doing going back to radio, actually go back a step. If you're on can't think of any other station names right now, 103.3, you're going to talk fast.
Okay.
Because it's cool, it's hip, we're doing a thing, and we just played that snazzy artist, and we're doing the fun thing, and the kids are listening, it's great. If you're doing an oldies show, like oldies, then you're going to slow it down a little bit and talk about this. And we had that artist playing. He played the World's Fair in 1960. Yeah. And you're going to do things like that.
You do like jazz station. You'll be like, yeah, man.
A lot of that's vocal fry, and that's what bugs me about people hating on just it's their stereotype, not mine, but teenage girls.
Yeah,
because they'll talk and they'll do I went to the mall kind of thing, and that's vocal fry. But you go back to old movies, guys used to do that. Like
really?
those gangster types and everything. Be like, see? That kind of thing. It's there. They just weren't criticized for it. They were praised for it because it's cool. See? But, so it's different presentations, different speeds for different genres. NPR, you kind of get nice and close. Mm-hmm. It's almost like an ASMR video.
Oh, very much, yeah.
And you pause. Let people absorb. They've gotten away from that a bit.
Yeah,
but that's the.
I was listening to kind of the radio. I think it was last night, and the guy was humming along with the song to the point where I'm like, "Does he know his mic is live?" Because it wasn't like I know out of Providence, there's Lady Di who flat out sings along with the radio, and that's like part of her shtick. But this guy, like the song's playing, you just hear everyone's like, and I'm like, did I hear that? He's definitely humming along. I'm like, it's the mic, and I just like, I'm sure that happens. But
sure, yeah, conversation over the music, but don't realize it's
yeah. Is that mic live? Ah, damn it!
It's the weirdest thing because if I walk into a radio studio and I hear nothing, I freeze because that usually means the microphone's on.
Oh, I got you.
Because the mic goes on and the speakers will cut out, otherwise you get that feedback kind of thing.
Right.
So everything just goes quiet. And sometimes, like I've known a couple DJs, they'll just keep almost everything down and listen to everything on their headphones.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts because every time I'll still freeze.
Yeah.
Walk in there. What's happening?
Yeah.
Oh,
is this live?
Are we on? What?
Yeah. So how do you turn radio? I feel like voiceover is like the next natural step.
Okay. That's a good step. Well, actually, what I do now, what I focus on now at the radio station is I'm the production director.
Okay.
So I pretty much make the commercials, in short. I mean, everyone does like 15 jobs, but the main focus is making the commercials. So meeting with the clients, writing, recording. If the clients are voicing anything themselves, directing the clients.
Oh, so you must know Blair and Will.
Blair?
Aren't they on W from Setting the Space?
Oh,
I'm pretty sure their ads used to run on there.
ooh, I think they did, but that
They
might have
used to
been
be
before
like,
me.
Hello Blair, hello Will. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't come across that myself. But I know the name setting the space. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, and they have to come back. Blair and Will, if you're listening. I do sales, too. So, a lot of people approach it in different ways. I, again, have that theater background. And again, I know a lot of people who are announcers. So the announcers will more often than not try to blow the doors off with some big, deep voice.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, it's like a pitcher in baseball.
Okay.
You might have that one amazing fastball pitcher.
Right.
He gets by with that fastball.
But he can't do anything else.
He can't do a curve. Off-speed pitches are a little awkward. And some people, Don LaFontaine,
Okay.
the big voice, the inner world guy. He was famous for that. That was his big thing, and he just nailed that and made a career out of that, no problem. But not everyone's like that.
Right.
And not everyone wants to hear that all the time either. The industry's probably gone through a change in the past 10, 15 years at least, where they want, like we were saying earlier, the more casual announcer types, the more conversation. They don't want people to be talked at. They want to make a relationship with the listener and whatnot.
Do you think that's a byproduct of things like podcasts?
No, I think it predated
Yeah.
standard podcasts.
Yeah.
I forget when the first ones kind of started, but it was probably around the same time. But I feel like the less announcer came out a little before that.
Yeah.
I'm really not sure why. Maybe just people got sick of being yelled at.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just one of those, after a while, it kind of becomes old-fashioned, I think.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, like,
They used to, in the golden days of radio, they would actually have an award every year for the person with the best dictation.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was like a category.
Never be nominated.
So, where are we? Speeds? No, we switched from speeds to commercials.
Yeah,
Making commercials and the
voiceover.
transition.
Yeah.
And then where I am with with making the commercials and whatnot, not every commercial is a straightforward announcer piece. Sometimes you need a character. Sometimes you need character voices. Sometimes you need in not just enthusiasm, but different pitches.
Right.
Right. You might say something caring. Oh, it's a loving Valentine's Day.
Or are you trying to be the
Date.
guy with the flu so you can sell...
Oh, exactly. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
so sick, and you're going through whatever. Yeah. So, in fact, there's another sales guy there who gets it, and he'll throw me in random commercials as different people. He's not necessarily looking for voices, but he's like, oh, you're her dad, and you guys are laughing back and forth about this thing.
So, did that kind of, where you have theater background, scratch that acting itch at the same time as the radio thing?
Yeah, it kind of works
Yeah.
out for me like that. I mean, I still do theater and stuff on the side, but yeah, it's never the same day twice doing my job, and I dig that because I don't know who's going to come through the door looking for what or why or how.
Yeah.
And we just make it happen.
That, to me, that's one of the things that I'm not good with, like that monotonous, like same thing every day.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's tedious.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. It gets real boring real fast. And so when you were introducing me, blah, 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 I'd love to think that was getting edited out. Nope.
Not
gonna
after
happen.
that remark earlier.
Nope.
No, we're gonna have a 5-minute blah blah loop.
Yeah. So at what point did you then start to do more voice acting? And have you done video games?
I did. I got into one video game a while ago, but it wasn't a big video game. It was just some. Their catch was, "Oh, we'll give you a free copy of the video game." I'm like, great! I've never actually done a video game before.
Yeah.
And they released it. And it was a free video game.
Yeah. So everybody gets a copy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was fun because I got impaled by an alien, so I got to do a lot of just screaming in my studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Gurgles and whatnot. So that was a good time. I'm trying to. I've taken for a little bit. I was voice tracking at a radio station in Vermont.
Voice tracking?
So voice tracking is when you are doing a radio shift, but they tell you ahead of time what you're going to be playing, so you pre-record what you're going to be saying.
Okay.
So they say, oh, we're playing artists A, B, and C, and then you're going on the microphone, then you're playing D, E, and F. So I go, oh, I just played A, B, and C.
So you're basically remote DJing?
Basically.
Yeah.
And I would do like a 5-hour shift in my bathrobe in the morning after hopping out of the shower, do the whole thing in less than an hour,
Yep.
send it up to Vermont, and then they would just play my voice like it was another song.
Oh,
Like
that's great.
it's on a set list, just bump, 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 bouncing through.
Yeah.
Then there's me.
your
then
track
there's commercials
8 or
whatever
whatever
else.
Yeah,
exactly.
Huh.
And that's how sadly, it's how a lot of radio works these days.
Because I mean, nowadays everyone can have a reasonably good recording studio in their home, and
Oh, that's true too. Yeah.
and you can just Dropbox it, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's what, like when you hear, I don't want to out anyone specifically, but things like that John Tesh show, or who's the love woman who does like the mushy love songs and whatnot.
Oh, is that Delilah?
Delilah, thank you.
Yeah.
I forgot her name for a second. But they will literally do that. They will you'll have a shared Dropbox folder.
Yeah.
And the computer is looking to, say, grab commercials from one folder, and it knows to grab tracks from this other folder. So they'll send the tracks over at, like, say, 3 in the afternoon. They land in that Dropbox folder. No one has to touch them. When the computer's playing through Delilah's stuff at 7 o'clock at night, it grabs her voice tracks from that computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of like, that's cool, and that's someone's
Cool and
job
sad at the
that
same
used
time.
to be.
That's very true,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
She has that one person doing she has that one fish, the proverbial fish.
Everybody should have a fish.
And but yeah, then there's 20 other people who don't have a job because that's just getting spread out through all these stations.
Right.
That's not to get too off track, but that's where
OffTrack is kind of our brand.
that's where deregulation took the whole radio industry.
Yeah.
Right now, my PSA for the night: the radio industry is mostly owned by 3 or 4 companies operating at billions, tens of billions of dollars in debt, so a couple people can be millionaires.
Really?
That's what deregulation
I
brought.
knew there was a lot of, or not a lot, there's a few companies owning the majority of the radio stations. But the
look
whole
up
debt
like
thing, I didn't.
iHeartRadio debt, I think would probably bring the most
Really?
quickest grab article. Yeah.
Wow.
Tens of billions of
So
dollars.
just kind of driving it into the ground, and
Yeah, just bleeding it dry. Like they just had a whole other round of layoffs at the beginning of the year.
wow.
Yeah. And you didn't think it could get any tighter, but it did. They cut people who were there for like 20, 30 years, had highly successful shows, but I feel like they laid off about 150 people and then gave 5 more people jobs who weren't even radio types. They were just suits, basically.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems like, and again, this could just be confirmation bias, but there is much more movement towards things like Pandora and Prime Music and podcast. Is that part of what's driving that? Like,
That's a bit of both.
Okay.
So there is obviously everything's gotten sliced into tinier and tinier shares.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back 60, 70 years, and you had the radio and your record player.
right.
And then you had radio, cassette tapes, CDs. Okay, CDs are a little easier. I can bring those around now with me. Cassette tapes, you had your Walkman. You didn't necessarily need to
Your
listen to the
Walkman
radio while you're
eats
walking
it.
around.
Yeah.
That's true, too. But even then, you could just switch. If once
Yeah.
your tape was eaten, you could switch over to the radio and still
Right.
listen to the radio. And then, more digital streaming services came around, and then it wasn't even just whoever at the beginning. Then a couple different ones came out, then a couple more different ones. And so it is pulling people away from the radio, but radio listenership is still actually a pretty sizable portion of the population.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people still listening to radio, even though they might not say it's their first go-to. They'll hear it in the car. But now podcasts, for instance, are eating into that too.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I might pop in, I have my 25-minute commute, so I'll pop in Inebri-art on the way down, hear the first half.
Why, thank you.
Wrap it up on the way back. And there it
It's
is.
funny. It's like the shorter rides I listen to radio. So like on my way to and from work, I listen to radio because it's like I don't have enough time to
You're not going to settle into
listen
something.
to anything.
Right, and you're not going to retain it 8 hours later.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's a longer ride, then I usually throw on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But even radio shows, like in the morning, I listen to Dave and Chuck the Freak.
Okay.
And
Who are in Michigan.
yeah, Detroit area? I think?
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But even they put their show up as a podcast.
Right.
So it seems like more and more, and I've even talked to some
talking. Past imperfect.
I am past imperfect and current imperfect and probably future imperfect. But some people at WATD who seem to be interested in making their show into a podcast.
Most of them do, actually. It's kind of It's both an afterthought and might as well kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because podcast is so... Yeah, you'd have to say the grandfather of podcasts are radio shows.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And you're already doing a radio show, and it's already recorded. Mm-hmm. So why not just do the extra step and right there?
Yeah.
So it's easy enough to do, and you might as well double down for a minimal investment and see who else you can reach out to and everything. Because even if you have a big radio show in one area, people in other areas might not be getting it. So
and
they
it's
might want to
surprising where you get downloaded.
Oh,
I
exactly.
mean, that constantly, I'll look and be like, really?
Let's hear this in Greece.
We have a steady listener in Nigeria.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Almost every episode.
Hello,
and
Nigeria.
We picked up one in Spain recently. So, hey,
Cool.
Spain, what's going on? I remember our first international download. We got downloaded in the Netherlands, and we were like, I can't believe that. That's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then we were talking to a friend of mine. He's like, I was listening to you guys when I was traveling the other. I'm like, where'd you travel? He's like, Netherlands. I'm like, dang, you just ruined it. Yeah.
I actually have an app on my phone. My website offered it to me, and it dings whenever someone visits my personal website.
Oh, really?
And I get to see where they're from.
Oh, that's
like
interesting.
earlier, I had someone from California.
Yeah.
It was actually right before you emailed me, and I'm like, could Andy's thing think he's in California? Weird.
Possible. But I just emailed you from an old email. So you were talking about working on some videos with a friend. So what are those about? What is that process like? How does it differ from radio?
There we go. Okay. Let's see. Well, we're specifically sticking with the voice acting stuff.
Yeah.
The way my friend did it is we kind of worked it out so that he had it's Paul Ezzy, by the way, and he has this great series called Model Citizens.
Okay.
And I think if you look up Onto Productions, ONTOE Productions, Model Citizens, or Model Citizens Kevin Lowney, it'll probably come up too.
Yep.
And they're like, when you're doing art classes, you get those little wooden figurines.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So it's basically them, but animated.
Okay.
Computer animation. Anyway, it'll look good, trust me. So that's his hook. That's his shtick. So we were talking, and he wasn't sure which parts he wanted me for, and he wanted to bring in other friends, of course, too, instead of just being one voice through the whole thing or multiple voices I'm doing. And that made perfect sense to me. I said, you know what, listen, none of these are too long. So either way, send me the scripts you might want me to be in. Mm-hmm. I'll sit down, give you 3-ish takes of each line in 3 different character voices. Yeah. And you can use the ones you want. And that's pretty much how the whole thing worked out. So I sat down for an hour and a half or so, gave him a bunch of different voices depending on what the characters sounded like, because I didn't even have much visual to go off of other than they're going to be these wooden figurines.
Right.
But he hadn't really made the visuals of them yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd kind of read them over and over again. You have to, from the acting standpoint, you have to make decisions based on what they're saying.
Right.
So we had this one obnoxious guy come in and say, wow, that's totally tubular, I can't believe it, something like that.
Yeah.
So of course I do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle kind of voice, well, it's totally tubular, I can't believe she did the thing.
Yeah.
So I gave him a couple different versions of that. You wouldn't necessarily do, a standard British. You wouldn't say, oh, wow, that's totally tubular. She did the thing.
It would be an interesting take.
It'd be a different thing, exactly. That would be a choice.
Yeah. So when you're recording these lines, it's got to be significantly different than when you're in a play, because in a play you're taking and acting off of someone else.
Yeah.
So
a big thing.
How do you kind of interpret what the other person would be doing?
Well, that's the advantage of having multiple takes at the very least.
Yeah.
You try to anticipate and maybe try to throw a couple curveballs in there. But it's nothing at all like acting with someone. When you're acting, even when we're talking back and forth, you can see me. You can see the expression on my face. You can see me wave my hand around like a maniac, because that's what I learned to do as a voice actor. Yeah. It gives you that extra oomph right there. You can hear it at home.
Because I've seen a lot of voice actors recording stuff, and you're always like, it seems like you're kind of overdoing it there.
And that's what you have to do, because again, you don't have that facial recognition or anything. So you're selling it, you're throwing it, you're overdoing it. Someone has this great thing. I won't do this to Fish entirely, but where he goes,
go ahead.
I'll see if I can do it without burying anything. He's like, if you can't audition for an anime and do a scream, go "Arr!" Yeah. You have to completely overdo it. You have to go "Arr!" and see if did I do it? Did I back off enough? No. Sorry. But that's the kind of thing. And you have to overdo it. And it also helps when you're auditioning, because people know you can do less.
Right.
Like if we were doing another take, Fish would look at me and go, do less. Or back up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you have to, you overdo it a lot without trying to sound corny. And that's a whole other thing, too. You're trying to dial in so many things at once. Volume, inflection, you're trying to add to that animation and still not sound like the weirdo you don't want to be.
Right.
You want to sound like the weirdo you do want to be.
And you want to sound like that voice is coming from that character.
Very true, too. Exactly. You need to... part of that's the casting director's decision.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, if you're auditioning for something, they will give you a description of the character and at least one picture of them. And that can help influence how you go about the voice.
Yeah.
If you see... like some tall, thin individual, or some short, thin individual, you might be kind of lilty. You might not have a lot of oomph to what you're doing, and it might come out as kind of almost squeaky and delicate.
Yeah.
If you have some kind of bigger guy, you might think that he's back of the throat more, kind of maybe a little rounder and doing things. So you have to interpret what you see and try to make that voice fit.
Do you have like a memory storage bank of voices, and like do you run into people
to work on that?
You run into people like, "Ooh, that's a good voice. I gotta see if I can do that."
There's a great movie. Oh my God, Veronica Lake, is that? No, that's the old actress. There's crumbs. Oh, I'm going to forget it now. Oh, In a World. The movie's called In a World.
Okay.
I mentioned Don LaFontaine earlier, and she is basically the daughter of a Don LaFontaine type, and she loves accents. So she'll be sitting like in a waiting room. Mm-hmm. And hear someone's weird accent, and she breaks out like a little recorder and just like holds it over her shoulder trying to get the accent, so she can learn the accent later. There's some people. I think we all have that. You have like an uncle or one of your parents or something that you're like, oh yeah, he talks like this because this is him. Burr, 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 burr. Everyone does that to some extent.
I'm so happy that you did that with your arms for our listeners who can't tell. He just kind of like wiggled his arms up and down.
Yep.
Because anytime this is like it's a running joke at work where I'll like imitate my boss to her. Like I'm not if I'm gonna give you a hard time, it's to your face.
There you go.
And it's my voice, and I just like robotically move my arms around and go, "Oh, I'm Carrie," and blah 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 blah. And she's like, "Why am I this?" I'm like, "I don't know. You just are."
That's just how it comes out. Exactly.
That's
exactly it.
Yeah. So whenever you did that, I'm like, "Oh yes, perfect." I'm a professional voice actor.
There you go. You have the chops. You're in.
So what has there been like one project or station show or commercial that was kind of like a real highlight, someone that you got to work with that
there's some things like the Marshfield Hills General Store. It's owned by Steve Carell. I finally met Steve a year and a half ago because he'd been in the station a few times, but he usually leaves before I come in. Mm-hmm. Not that he's avoiding me, just time-wise.
No, he's not avoiding you at all.
Yeah, no, never. Why would he? But Nancy Carell, what's her maiden name? Because she only finally just started going by Carell. Nancy Walls. She was on SNL. She's a very funny lady. Mm-hmm. And she writes a lot of the commercials for the store. And I've recorded a few things with them. And
that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I've sent a couple commercials their way, and it feels weird because she has her own silly character for the show. It's her and her sister-in-law who runs the day-to-day kind of store stuff. And Nancy's kind of the eccentric doofus sort of.
Yeah.
And then her sister-in-law is just like, no, it's not how it goes, Nancy. But Tish, this is a thing. No, it isn't, Nancy. So they have this wonderful back and forth. And so I sat down because they needed, they have like 3 or 4 commercials that they repeat. And I wanted to give them 2 or 3 more. And it feels like fan fiction at first.
Yeah, that's got to be super weird.
Because they didn't ask me. They didn't give me anything specifically. Yeah. I'm like, maybe you're paying for this. Maybe I can give you a little more.
Right.
And so I just sat down like, I'm writing in someone else's voice. When you expect them to do it kind of almost for you.
Right.
It's just weird. It just feels weird.
And that's got to be such a trip. Like, me and Fish were talking the other day. I'm like, I got to email this person's PR. And he's like, can we just stop and notice that you said that like it's not a big deal? And I'm like, yeah, it's really weird that like that's a thing now that you're emailing PR people and
using lingo.
Yeah, it's just, it's weird, and it just strangely become, it's not, I don't want to even say second nature. It's just like so busy. I don't have time to be like, holy shit.
Exactly. No, it's a shorthand and you just got to do this thing right now. Because that's what you're focused on. It's great. It's wonderful that you had a second to look back and realize this.
Yeah, that's what Fish does. He points out things like that, and usually how I'm wrong. But like I said, everyone needs a fish.
There we go.
So, is there something? Like on your...
doing the things for Nancy Krell was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I did one of my favorite commercials that I've done.
Favorite.
It goes back to like talking. Is that I did a Mike and Ikes commercial.
Oh, okay.
In Canada.
Did you have to do it in French?
No, fortunately.
Okay.
It was Toronto. They don't say Toronto. It's like you say Medford around here.
Yeah. Medford?
They're Medford.
Yeah.
They say Toronto.
Really?
That's what I learned. That's what I took away. And a paycheck, which was nice.
Yeah.
So
Paycheck's better.
Paycheck's better, exactly. And I'm not sharing the paycheck with you, but the knowledge. The knowledge
story,
is amazing,
yeah.
yes. And so we brought in a couple kids who talked about it. It was Mike and Ike did the storyline, kind of like what Left Twix and Right Twix is doing.
Okay.
Where they had a separation.
Oh,
and
Mike
they couldn't stand it, Mike and Ike.
Yep.
So when you'd go to the store, you'd see the boxes of Mike and Ike's, and sometimes Mike's name would be crossed out.
Oh,
and
right.
other times Ike's name would be crossed out. Yeah, same kind of gimmick. And so I did like this newscaster voice saying, "Oh, isn't it horrible how they've broken up and blah, blah, blah." And I recorded these kids who talk about how, "Oh, I'm Team Mike, I Team Mike," or whatever the whole thing was. So that was fun to not only put together, not only get paid for, but also to know it got sent off to Canada.
Yeah. Did you do the whole thing? Like
I
the direction?
produced the whole thing. Yeah. I directed it too, in fact, yeah. I mean, the person who wrote it from the ad agency had input.
Right.
So kind of he directed me, and then we both directed the kids. It's
Yeah.
probably more specifically how that went. But, yeah. So that's a fun one. That's one I like to trot out when I can.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Is there something like on your bucket list that like I'd really like to do voiceover for an anime or?
I want to be in some national, international cartoon or
Pixar
or something. Yeah. Honestly, Pixar and whatnot, aside from like some background voices and whatnot, is. Unless I have a big turn of fortune, is probably never really going to happen.
Yeah, Pixar's always
They always hire stars, exactly.
Named
Though in, I think it was the third Shrek movie, they had Rumpelstiltskin.
That's
DreamWorks, sorry,
yep.
but slight. So they had Rumpelstiltskin, and he was the only non-famous person. Because what he did, I forget who was the director. He's one of those behind-the-scenes guys.
Yeah.
So basically, as they're trying to lay everything out and get a sense for the timing for the animations, he would just about do everyone's voices.
Yeah.
To whatever extent. Obviously, he's not a complete sound-alike. But then he did his own thing for Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
And as they're casting everyone else, of course, Mike Myers is Shrek and so on and so forth down the line, they're kind of listening to him against all these other famous people. They're like, no, we're going to keep him.
It's funny because like I know there's a few stories in Pixar where like they'll do kind of those animatics where someone who's working in Animate or whatever will do a voiceover and then like, oh, we like the voice you did for that. So I think there's one in Monsters Incorporated, and Brad Bird did the voice of Edna Mode in The Incredibles.
No kidding.
So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just one of those. He did the voice and they're like, no, it's perfect.
That's it.
And he's a director, so it's like, okay, whatever. So sometimes it's, right place, right time. But I mean, there's just so much content out there now that do you think you'd have an easier time doing something like that if you were in like an LA area, or do you think that matters anymore?
It doesn't matter as much, but yeah, a lot of times they not only want to meet you if they don't know you, but they do want you to audition for parts even if you're famous.
Yeah.
And they if it's an involved thing like your average Teen Titans Go or something like that, they, as much as they can, want everyone in the same room. Going back to that whole acting thing, you can react to people who are in the room with you.
Oh, so on stuff like that, they record like everybody at once?
They try to.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I
always
didn't
happen.
realize that,
especially, again, when you get to the famous people.
Yeah.
You work around their schedule when it's the big famous people. But as much as you can. I've been following Tara Strong, a big voiceover type, on Twitter. And she likes to bring her phone around and have random shots. So you'll see, like, the cast in one room.
Oh, cool. What does she voice over?
She's probably most famous for the animated Harley Quinn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think she's one of the Powerpuff Girls. Just about, I don't want to limit her, but any squeaky voice.
Yeah.
Just this kind of squeaky voice. She doesn't, she does more, but she mostly hears squeaky voices. Timmy Turner, I think she does also, from Fairly Odd Parents.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny when you see these people. The perfect example is H. John Benjamin. It's like you watch Archer and you see Archer and then you see him and you're like, no, that can't come out of that guy. Or Tommy Pickles from Rugrats.
Oh, sure.
I mean, she's beautiful. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Actually, is that Tara Strong is one of the Rugrats? That better not be her.
She was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh no, that's Dot, right?
Yeah.
Whoever
I can't
that
think of
is,
what her
Crumbs.
name is.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank too.
Yeah,
it's not Julie Cartwright. Oh, anyway.
So, do you find yourself watching a lot of animated stuff?
Yeah, I've been watching it differently. Like, I have a friend of mine didn't give me her login for Disney Plus, and so I haven't been watching the TV series Gargoyles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Gargoyles came out. I was like the end of high school for me, something like that.
Sure, yeah.
And it's just so big. There's so much bigness to it, and so dark. And they actually have some decent storylines. 90% of it holds up. I mean, it was written and drawn for like 14-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, I was 14 at the time, and it was absolutely it was great. It was that first like Western cartoon that treated me like I could pay attention for more than 20 minutes.
So
it's like, yeah, I'm here. I want to see the next one because the story's going to keep going, and it's going to...
Wasn't Jonathan Frakes involved in that, too?
He was the director and Xanatos.
95% of the Star Trek The Next Generation cast ended up on that goddamn show at some point.
So, little back history into Fish. He only chimes in when it's Star Trek. Voice actors he's a big fan of, or baseball.
I'm here to cover all the giant gaps in Andy's knowledge base.
I know a fair amount about voice actors.
Yeah, just nothing about Star Trek or baseball.
I know a fair amount about Star Trek.
Okay, that's fair.
Baseball, nothing. Nothing at all.
Nothing.
But it's funny because Fish is a big voice actor fan and has gotten me into knowing more about them through... are you familiar with Critical Role?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's like a huge thing now. I don't know where I was kind of going to go with that other than like...
seeing different voice actors on there and whatnot.
The real people,
So suddenly you're just listening to this person for 5 minutes and either you catch a hint of it or maybe you look them up on IMDb. And you're
does anyone recognize you based off your voice? Be like, God, I know I've heard... have we
When
met?
I was at the bigger radio station in Plymouth, I would get it like 2 or 3 times a year. Nothing on a regular basis. Lately, not so much.
Because I feel like that's the one thing is like you hear someone's voice and you're like, God, I know that. Why is that? What is that? Who is that? And then it's that itch that you can't seem to scratch.
Exactly. Crumbs! I was going to go on to something before going on to D&D podcasts. It's a whole other thing.
Oh well, we were talking about
actors and whatnot. So Tara Strong. Let's go. Gargoyles. Yeah. And so I'm listening to it completely differently now. Like even then, I knew it was the TNG cast.
Yeah.
For the most part, I didn't know. At first, I thought Michael Dorn was Goliath because they just have that big voice. But it's
Keith David.
Keith David. Thank you.
Which one's Keith David?
Goliath.
No, I mean,
what else does he do?
Oh, okay, all right.
He's not on Star Trek.
Oh, that's
the
just
one guy.
Oh, got it.
He has that great growl.
He's got this great voice. He used to do like the old Navy commercials.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those things where if you hear his voice, you will know exactly who he is.
Yep.
Okay. And again, with the Navy commercials, I thought that was I'm forgetting his name now, but Commander Sisko from Deep Space Nine. Avery Brooks. I thought it was Avery Brooks at first.
He's got a great voice.
Yeah. And Goliath. I'm out of my element tonight suddenly. What's his name again?
Keith David.
Keith David. Did you watch Community, the TV show?
No.
Oh, okay. He was on the last 2 seasons of Community.
Yeah.
But I was going to make a point. It's gone out.
Yeah, we were talking about Gargoyles and listening to it from a different...
Oh, listening. Thank you. There it is. And so then I listened to it because I would recognize the voices eventually and pick them together because I knew from the TV series. But now I'm listening to see how they're acting. What are they doing? What are they? And for the most part, I mean, they're doing top-notch jobs. Sometimes you'll see these cartoons, especially like 80s or whatnot, where they have like 1 hour, record everything, get out. Ed Asner was Hudson. I didn't realize that until recently.
Holy crap.
Yeah. You don't think of Ed Asner acting. I mean, it's just funny, but...
I don't think of Ed Asner voice doing a... Wait. Wasn't he Grady Goodness too?
Who? That one I don't know. Who's Grady Goodness? Yeah.
In the 90s old Batman series.
Huh.
Oh God.
Oh God, it's gonna be a minute.
But there were a lot of surprise cameos on the original Batman animated series too, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got in there. In fact, Gargoyles was Disney's answer to Batman the animated series.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They definitely had the
before
same
that they
feel.
had Darkwing Duck, which they not surprisingly, shut off as they started Gargoyles.
Which is a crying shame because that show was.
You know, I watched the first 5 episodes of it.
It was a great Batman parody.
Yeah.
Because it kind of came backwards. He was Darkwing, and then he realized, oh crap, I need to be a person now, and it was a lot of fun.
That's
exactly. They didn't build Darkwing at all, unfortunately. Because I watched the first couple episodes, I'm like, did I miss something? We're just doing it suddenly.
Yeah.
Yep. 5 episodes, and he had 4 different origin stories. As the series went on.
Oh, really? I forgot that because I
Why
haven't caught up. Yeah. But I remember eventually it gets into, you get all these secondary characters and whatnot. Right now I'm 4 or 5 episodes in. You only see the Bush guy a couple times.
Yeah.
And he's a guy who's done a ton of stuff, too. I wish I could remember his name. But, yeah, so I'm watching Gargoyles not just to see how the show stands up, but hearing the different actors and whatnot. Maria Sirtis has a big part in it. She's Demona in Gargoyles.
Yep.
Her first episode, she didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. Either she thought she had it, or she was rushed, or something wasn't clicking. Because she's like, I'm Demona. I'm angry now. And it's just, I feel like maybe she was just more used to selling facial expressions or whatnot.
Yeah.
And just didn't click. But 2 episodes later, 2 appearances of hers later, she was there.
Yeah.
I don't know what finally clicked or what
maybe
did
it's
it.
An off performance.
Yeah, maybe it's just an off day.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has an off day too. You're doing something for your friend. It's like, oh yeah, it's some silly cartoon.
Yeah.
But she came into her own, finally just hitting it, or she had it the whole time, but just had that one off day.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear all these different people's choices and whatnot as they're going through things.
I always find it's interesting if there's shows or whatnot that you enjoy. And say it's 4 or 5 years down the line, you go back and you listen to early episodes, you're like, wow, it's so different. It's the same character, same person voicing them, but, through the course of time, they've, really fleshed out that character.
They moved into that character, yeah.
I'm going to go back to Archer, Pam.
Sure.
I went back and listened to early episodes, and I'm
Greer,
like,
right? Yeah.
oh, yeah. I'm like, totally...
Wait, is Judy Greer Pam?
No, Judy Greer does.
Is,
who does Pam? Judy Greer does. Oh crap!
the
one who
I've
constantly
missed the last
changes.
couple seasons.
Cheryl. Yeah.
Judy Greer is Cheryl, and I can't remember the woman's name who voices Pam.
But Pam is so kind of flat and straight in the beginning, and then by who got 2, it's
giant back tattoos.
Yeah.
And,
it's so great.
She's. Yeah, she turns into... Well, she fits the cast a lot better later on.
There we go, yeah.
She goes as completely insane as everyone else on that show needs to be to work.
To keep up, exactly.
Yeah, because otherwise it would just not make sense if she was the only normal person.
Yeah, being the sane person in that mess is not healthy.
Well, that's what Chris Parnell's for.
Oh,
Cyril.
He is
He's not sane.
He is not.
Yeah.
But he's the straight man.
He's the
straight
Everyone's
as they
doing
get.
backflips off buildings and shooting guns and landing on moving buses.
And
How do you do that?
And he just runs out screaming and shoots everything at the same time.
Exactly. So he has his freakouts too, but you didn't need 2 straight people, especially one that was bland.
Yeah. Do you have projects of your own that you intend to want to work on? Do you have oh, this would be a good idea for a cartoon?
Not really. I mean, the downside to writing everyone else's voice, in commercials and whatnot, is I worry I've lost my own voice. I have this constant identity crisis.
Yeah.
I'm so-and-so for this, so-and-so for that. What am I for
Who
me?
am I?
Yeah.
Am I Mike or am I Ike?
And why do I hate myself? Either.
This has been really interesting because we always try to get a wide variety of people on the show, and it's one of those I never thought that a voice actor would be local.
Sure.
It's not really something you You'd be like, oh, my cousin does,
Right. It was like finding a DJ. Oh, my cousin does it, but he has like an iPad and a couple of crappy speakers. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's, no offense, DJs. I feel like that's every DJ now. They have an iPad and a good speaker.
Another example of things becoming accessible.
Yeah.
And then you have your proverbial thumbtack webpage, and everyone just throws up, oh, no, I'm a cheap DJ, so that's fine.
Right.
But then these people are out there, unfortunately, ruining parties.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to mix up the music or how to read the crowd or how to bring things to this like a professional DJ would.
Yeah.
And that's actually a big thing in the voiceover community. People doing things on Fiverr. Or again, the proverbial Fiverr.
Yeah.
I'll do your commercial for $5.
Right.
It's like, well, no, because then, first of all, they're more than likely to suck.
Right. It's going to sound like it's been done for $5.
It's going to sound like it's done for $5, exactly. Even though almost no one on Fiverr does things for $5 anymore. But, whatever that cheap range is, you're starting at almost nothing. You're not going to go up to anything worthwhile.
Right.
But even if people who do sound good start doing that, then you dilute the whole industry.
Right.
And then even though now, let's say, 5% of all voiceover actors can make a living at it, then that becomes even less, or it cuts out that whole middle ground between the 5% and the people who can almost do it for a living.
Right.
Because they get sucked down to that lower tier because they're not already held up in that upper echelon.
Right, because they're not in that, H. John Benjamin level.
Exactly.
So they can't make that breakthrough.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So,
and I love H. John Benjamin, by the way, because he sounds different, but H. John Benjamin talks like Archer, talks like Bob from Bob's Burgers.
Yeah, he has got...
It's pretty much that voice. It's
one
just that
voice,
intonation.
And it varies up so slightly that it's incredibly... it's absurd, because it's the same guy. He doesn't have a ton of range, but he varies it up just enough to
sell it.
Oh, he's incredibly funny.
Oh,
but
yeah. But it's H. John Benjamin.
But
There's no mistake.
It's Archer isn't... Bob isn't the guy from Arby's. It's... 3 different guys with the exact same voice, and I don't know how it works.
It's amazing.
My favorite thing he's ever done was, I think it was a bit on Last Week Tonight, where they were talking about robots taking people's jobs, and they were talking about like the Stop and Shop robot.
Oh, the creepy one, yeah.
And they're like, store employee's job isn't to help you, it's to break up fights. And so then it cuts to like a Home Depot, and it's got the dude from Parks and Rec with the mustache whose name I can never remember. Nick Offerman.
Between the three of us, we got all these names.
And he's in the Home Depot attire, and the couple shopping is H. John Benjamin and this other woman who I don't know who it was. And they keep going to different departments and getting into arguments, and he's like, oh, let me show you something, breaking up. And my favorite bit is they're looking at flooring, and H. John Benjamin's like, oh, I really like the bamboo. And she's like, I bet you do. He's like, what? She's like, I've seen your search history. He's like, what? She's like, Asian girls? What if our daughter was Asian? He's like, why would our daughter be Asian? But yeah, just perfect deadpan, like a comedic genius. He's so good.
There we go.
We're pretty much at the time mark.
You're kidding?
No.
Wow, that does go fast.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in Fish's position at work, it always feels like every minute of it. But on this side, it's fun.
Well, I'm sure Fish feels the same way listening to me over and over and over again. But where can people go online? You said you have
voiceoverkevin.com. See a lot of the things I've done, and
if they go there, it pings on your phone.
Yes, exactly. I know instantly.
Yeah,
in a creepy way. I can even bring up a chat thing on the screen. I haven't done that yet. I'm like, I don't want to be a creep. I don't want to be a creep.
I'm like, hey, what do you know on my site?
What do you like it? You like it?
Huh? Is it good? You like me? Like me?
Exactly.
Then you find out it's like some sort of Russian bot.
Probably all they are. Exactly. It's like a search engine. Like, I got to index this site. But voiceoverkevin.com.
Yeah, this was an absolute blast. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, same here.
And we'll definitely have you back, man. This was a good time.
Great. Yeah.
I feel like we got lots to talk about.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
In our announcer
voices stuff, and
I don't know if I have an announcer. Is this the closest?
You got to work on the resonance in the back of the throat. That's one thing I want to get started actually doing. Talk about the ways to do different voices.
Yeah,
there are basically 6 parts in your mouth to do different voices.
Really?
We don't have time for that.
No.
I'm teasing getting myself back on the show.
There you go. We'll definitely do that because actually a friend of mine sent me a link one time about voice acting voiceover class.
Oh, sure.
And you
have to watch out for those because
I'm sure some of it's fly by night.
Yeah.
But it was like something fairly locally kind of thing. And he's like, hey, we should check this out. And I'm like, and it just was one of those, I'm busy that night or whatever. Yeah. So now we'll just go to Voiceover Kevin.
VoiceOverKevin.com. learn everything.
Nice. Thanks again, man. And
blast.
Thanks for listening to podcasts.
Yeah,
too.
you make it happen,
Yeah.
the listener.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art, except for Instagram, we're at Inebri-art6. You can email us with your questions, complaints, and whatnot at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And if you're looking for more podcasts, you can check out the other podcasts on our network, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror, and, of course, Bar Talk, Old Colony, and Inebri-art Podcast, the original. So check those out and subscribe and comment so we can reach more people, and thanks for listening.